performed at my birthday party, which was wonderful. So welcome, Marc Bosserman.
Hey, thank you, man. It's great to be here.
Good, good. So how long have you been performing?
Uh, wow. It's a good question. I think I started playing the piano when I was about 8 years old, something like that. I was actually living in Temple Terrace, Florida, when I started, and then I think probably within 4 years I started playing. I would play for school events, and then I started playing in church when I was maybe 12 or 13. And I wasn't like the guy necessarily playing the piano, like I wasn't doing the organ for the church service, but the church that I went to was pretty cool, and they would feature independent musicians, like, or just people that played music, and we would come in and do a song. And so I started performing then. And I think I've always loved performing. I mean, it's always been like a major thing for me. I think it's one of my favorite things to do.
And when did you start writing songs?
It's funny, but I think I started writing almost instantly. I mean, one of the things when I started playing the piano, my dad bought a piano for the family. I think I was 8. I might have been 7. Could have been 7 or 8. And I remember he brought the piano home, and somebody that was sat down to the piano. You get a piano and everybody's all interested in it. And somebody that I don't even remember who it was. They sat down at the piano and they were playing Heart and Soul. And I don't know, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds so amazing. And show me that. What are you doing? That kind of thing. And so he started showing me how to do it. And the great thing that this guy said is you can improvise. And he started showing me that I could just create whatever I wanted to. And that just blew my mind. All of a sudden, I think at that moment in time, I became a music creator. And I think so my background is sort of a jazz, from the second that I got into playing music, I was interested in not just, I didn't want to just learn the songs that were on the radio. I wanted to create my own music. I wanted, so that was.
And of course, you've been doing that. How many songs do you think you've written?
Oh, wow. Hundreds of songs. I mean, I don't know,
And
200.
they're all on the internet.
Oh, if you wanted to count, I mean, if you wanted to count the stuff I've done for TV and film, I mean, it would probably go up to 1,000 or something like that, or maybe more. They're not all on the internet. I mean, I think a lot of, I've a lot of songs that I've written. I wrote them and I had them in the books of lyrics that I wrote, and I would perform them, and I don't even know that I would even remember them now, some of them. I mean, a friend of mine, Carol, had a poem that she did that I just loved, and I made a song to it, and, I cannot remember how that song goes, but I remember I really liked it. So I'm trying to get her to find a copy of it, because I would love to,
Right.
revisit it, But anyway, yeah, I think that, the greatest joy that there is in life is creating, and it never gets old.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. So in your career, or not even in the career, let's take this another way. What do people need to know, should they know, about music? Just the whole subject, of creating music and the things you're doing. What's the message that you'd like for them to know?
Well, I'd like them to know that I think that if you really get, to get a little bit philosophical, I think in life, in anybody's life, the only real pay that you get for living is communication. And so then, you know, and so that in your life, the more that you communicate with people and the more interaction that you have with people, the more enjoyment that you're going to get out of life, the more fun that it's going to be. And I think basically an artist is just a person that is, I don't want to say obsessed with it because it's not, you know, might have a negative connotation, but I just say a person that's really interested in communicating. I mean, I think the only reason anybody does art is because they really want that. They want that, at least, you know, for me, and I think most everyone, it's that art, when you're creating art and you're getting feedback from people and you're, you know, that in itself is the greatest thing that there is in life. I mean, I think I have a super big, you know, at least for me, the super big emphasis on interchange. Like whenever I'm performing live, I'm always trying to involve the audience in that. And I think because that interaction is what is the most beautiful thing that I know of in life. And I think probably if anybody really looks it over, they would see that, you know, what their highest points in their life were when they were just really in great communication with someone or with a group of people. That's another thing I realized as an artist, is that, you know, that's what's so awesome about performing. So when you're performing, or when you're performing for a group of people, you're actually communicating with, you know, 1,000 people, or, you know, however many people are there. Or if you have a song on the internet and it gets heard by 1,000 people, that's a 1,000 times you've had that,
Right.
you know, that communication. So I think that's the essence of it. And I think I also think that, you know, because you're operating in the arts, and the arts are beauty, that artists tend to be people that want to make the world more beautiful. They want to make the world a better place. And so, I mean, that's essentially, you know, what drives me. I know, you know,
Right. Okay, that's beautiful. You know, my art, of course, is words, but yours is music. So now, how do you explain that music is a communication?
I would just say that, I mean, it's perception. You're hearing sounds, and you also, and you know, I think when it's live, you also get the visual of whatever is happening, the lighting, the way that you can see the musician and their passion, and, you know, what they're, you know, so there's a lot of, like, perception is communication. And you're, you know, when you're listening to music, you're listening to another person's point of view. You're getting this beautiful viewpoint of life, or maybe a new viewpoint. I think that's part of what makes a cool piece of art, is like maybe a slightly different perspective, or a new angle on looking at something that you haven't looked at before, a new way of a new take on life.
I love that. You know, it's sort of, again, in my profession, would be a turn of phrase. You know, I'm saying something a little differently, but you are doing it with sound, in the same way that somebody said, "Oh, that's special. Oh, look at that." You know, I'm reminded of Marcel Proust, the French philosopher. And he said, "The real voyage of discovery lies not in seeing new landscapes, but in having new eyes."
Wow.
And that's kind of what you're saying. It's like a different perception, a different way to look at it, right? And if you think about artists, especially in jazz, and as you may know, I work with Chick Corea. You know, you hear Chick Corea, and of course you know it's him because he has a perspective. Just like you could look at Van Gogh or anybody and say, "Oh, well, I know who that is," because they are asking you to perceive in a certain way. So that's good. That really illuminates and elucidates what the game of music and sound are all about. And
Let,
by the way, on Chick, I once asked him what he's trying to do, and he said that I'm giving my audience moments of happiness. Okay? I'm giving them moments of no problems, no concerns, no fears. And I thought that was beautiful. Like that's his gift.
that's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very nice.
Let me say one other thing that you reminded me of, and that is, I mean, really, I look at music as a language. I mean, music itself it's kind of like we're speaking English right now, and we have,
Right.
and each person has their own way of speaking English. Even though English is a certain set of words, every single person has their own phrases that they like and their own vibe on whatever it is that they're trying to say, and their own special way of saying it. And I think music is really a language that really is a kind of a universal language, because you don't have to speak English to understand music. Anyone in any person alive, or even I'm sure dogs and cats and animals can get that
Yeah.
vibration and that, and can do
Oh,
something.
that is so apt, Mark. I never really looked at it that way, because you consider, like, okay, doo-wop rock and roll, which I know a lot about,
Okay.
considering my age. That was a particular language, and then you move through the languages, the 80s, and you get rap. Rap's a language. Yes, it's words, but its rhythm and its emphasis, it's another language, right? And especially so in jazz,
Absolutely.
where people, musicians, are really creating, anywhere from might be normal to very far out language, right?
Yeah.
So that's really great. Well, let me ask you one other question here. You've studied music, you've studied audiences, you've worked hard in achieving what you've achieved in your career. What can you share with other new or would-be musicians, or those striving to get better known and to communicate to more people? If you had to give them a few pieces of advice from someone who's been doing it, been there, done that, what
Yeah.
would you tell them?
Well, the first thing that I would tell them, it's funny. It's funny that I think a lot about this subject, because the first thing I might say is that in order to be an artist, in order to be able to be an artist, and you have to be doing something that is sustainable or viable. You have to do it in such a way that you can keep doing it. So that's where income comes into it. That's where marketing comes into it. So I would even say, it's funny, like looking at it from a business point of view. I was actually talking to some people the other day, and I thought, they should just cancel the word business and they should just call it life. Because I really feel that part of being successful in life is not just having a skill or a product that you can make, but it's having the ability to find an audience and find people that are interested in that product, and to be able to exchange, which boils down right there again to communication. So you have, you have this product, which is communication, which is music, is a product. It's something that you're communicating, but you also have to, have a way of communicating, like, here's my music and here's some exchange. There has to be some kind of way to do that. Otherwise, it isn't going to be a viable activity. You're not going to be able to do it. So I would say that realize, even though this is something that for me also, like I realized wow, my whole life I had this idea that if you're an artist, and I think a lot of artists have this idea, that if you're an artist, your art is the only thing that's important. And that if you're just a brilliant artist, that everything else will take care of itself. But that isn't really true. And I mean, even to the point of like, to me, it's a funny thing, but there's plenty of artists that were unbelievably fantastic artists, but they didn't know how to market. So they weren't really happy in their life.
Right.
And so, so I would say to really be able to be an artist and be able to continue to be an artist, you have to know something about marketing. You have to know something about, basic, I would say, I usually say marketing, but I think it's also, marketing is a big part of it, because that's usually the weakest link in it. It's like, you got to get out in front of people. You have to sell yourself. You have to tell people that you're an artist. You have to, you have to offer performances, or you have to offer music, or you have to have something that you can offer that you can get some kind of exchange for. And, but I would also say, the rest of business, all the business practices, you also should be able to handle your finances well. And you have to know how to, get enough sleep at night so that you're not wiped out, and, keep yourself on
And all the more reason why it should be called the business of life.
Exactly.
Not necessarily the music business per se. You raise a good point. Somebody who has fantastic art, superb art, it usually is not enough.
It's not.
It's enough to give them drive. Okay? But that drive has to persist and persist. And it's not to say that every musician now needs to do a course on marketing. They should get more familiar with it, but one way or another, they're going to have to find someone who is going to put them out there. Okay? They're not going to get discovered doing fantastic work in their studio. And we both know, Mark,
Exactly.
there's, pardon the phrase, but there's a lot of crap out there that's very popular. See, that neither you nor I or anybody else would say, oh, well, that's a really good artist. No, there's some other qualities, whatever, but it's not true art. On the other hand, we've been to places, whether it's a small dive or a bar or something like that, where you hear someone say, this guy is fantastic, look at amazing.
Yeah.
And they're starving. So I agree with you. I think what you're saying is it's all about the business of life, and the business of life includes communication, and it includes receiving a return for what you're doing. And if you don't put that out there, there is no return.
That's right. And you have to understand that in order to be a musician or any kind of artist, somehow you have to have an audience that likes your music or your art well enough to support you for giving them the art. So there is this two-way communication that has to occur there, or you're, I always give the example of, and this, for some people this is I think for me it's easy to get, like difference between Van Gogh and Monet. If we say, which artist do you like better, Van Gogh or Monet? Well, I personally, I think Van Gogh was just amazing. And Monet is good. I like Monet, but he doesn't thrill me. He doesn't have this extra thing that I think Van Gogh had, although he's amazing. Van Gogh was a farmhand. He didn't sell his paintings. His brother did, and I don't think his brother was a great marketer. And he was, he worked in a bank, or he was a farmhand. I mean, there's a picture of his bedroom. It's like it's like a single bedroom with it's not very classy. And he, he committed suicide. He cut off his ear. He was a little bit like I don't think he was a very happy person. Monet, on the other hand, lived on house with a big garden and koi ponds and lily flowers, and he painted them all the time, and he had parties, and he knew everybody, and he did great. He was a great marketer. So it's just, to me, it's like the different, like, I could give another example of Bach, who had 12 children, as opposed to Chopin, who had no children and died miserable, friendless. And Bach was like, worked for kings, and I think he was a better marketer. He also, after his life, 60 other organists at one time in Germany were Bach's. So he passed it on. He was a great marketer. He was he had a good salesman, and and I don't think you don't listen to Chopin and go, well, he just didn't play that well, because his pieces are unbelievably beautiful, and they'll be around forever. Same thing, Bach. But it's not the art. It's the ability. It's the marketing ability. Same thing. Beethoven was not a great marketer, but anyway, whatever. I could go on that.
Well, yeah. Look, the point is that we know the art has to be there,
right,
to reach the greatest number of people, but it also has to get out there to them, and all that is again, if we just put it into this one big vessel, which we can call the art of living.
Okay.
And to the degree you do that, again, if I go back to Chick Corea, probably around when I was working with him in the 70s and in the 80s, he recognized that I'm not going to just give my career over to somebody and have them run it. I need to understand management. And he began studying a lot of management principles, at which point he was able to hire correctly. And he was able to turn everything over. And more importantly, Mark, he knew whether they were trying to fool him or not, because he knew what it was all about.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So again, not to concentrate on Chick.
Oh, there's so many examples of artists that, that didn't understand that they had to understand management themselves. And so they were taken advantage of. And I think that's what, like, a lot of artists, complain about. You hear this sometimes, people complaining about, his management was so bad they ripped him off. But I think the artist, like just what you're saying, it's more always a smarter thing to understand something about management yourself, so that people can't bullshit you about
Exactly. Well, we live in a different era now, because you can do your music and put it on the internet.
That's right.
I realize that sounds very simple. Oh, just make my song and put it on the internet. But even that has technology. How do you get it on? Where do you put it on? In what fashion? How do you design it? Otherwise, you can say, well, my songs are on the internet. How many downloaded it? Or how many listened? 3. Well, you could have done that on a street corner.
Right. Exactly. That's just the beginning. Putting it on the internet is one thing, but then marketing it and getting it in front of people and getting it seen by people. Yeah. Okay. Which is, I don't think I finished this point, and that is, I had this concept that if I was just an artist, that everything would be great. And I think that you get, and then you don't realize that in order to, if you want people to hear your music or, see your art, you have to put it in front of them. If you want that, you need to know how to do that, or you are not going to be happy. It's just, but it's this kind of idea, like the only thing you find out about is how people were discovered. That was my whole, growing up. Every artist or every person, they were discovered by blah blah blah, and it's always about they were discovered. Well, but then I think like the really amazing artists had, like Prince really knew how to market. He really knew how to, he controlled his management 100%. And he didn't, Same thing. Stevie Wonder, I think, is very good at, knowing what he wanted to do, and anyway. And Chick,
Yeah.
obviously,
and then create a particular persona, and we could go through the Beatles and Presley.
yeah.
And
Paul McCartney
everybody
is
else,
probably the king of.
You talk about discovered. My group was discovered.
Okay.
We were the original Temptations, 1962, and we were discovered by a manager who who heard us as he was passing by the schoolyard.
Okay.
We were doing, a cappella. And, but you say, well, we were discovered. Yeah, but we spent 3 years singing on that schoolyard and in hallways finding the perfect echo, for 3 years. We weren't really discovered. We had it down, right?
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Where can other musicians and people interested in the work you do, how do they reach you? What's the best way to contact you?
I mean, the simplest thing is they can, on my website, which is my name, Marc, M-A-R-C, Bosserman, B-O-S-S-E-R-M-A-N, M-A-R-C, B-O-S-S-E-R-M-A-N.com, marcbosserman.com. And then from there you can, my phone number's on there, my email, reach out. And there's another great one, Linktree, linktr.ee. Anyway, that I can give you that. I'll send it to you. But
great.
Linktree is a good link. But I think marcbosserman.com is good. That's simplest.
Okay, great. Now most of my listeners know or soon discover that I'm a big fan of L. Ron Hubbard. I've studied his management works for 50 years. I've been an artist in many spheres, including music and dance, and as a lyricist and dramatist. And I know that you have done a fair amount of study. If you had to recommend a particular book that could help them in their career, what would you say? What would you recommend?
I would recommend two books. The first one I would recommend is the book that he wrote about art itself, the art book.
Oh,
just
right.
because I found, for me, and it's funny that you mentioned Chick Corea, because, Chick Corea is the person that he was so enthusiastic about what he had learned studying the L. Ron Hubbard's information about life. I got interested in looking into that from him constantly talking about it. So he kind of introduced me to L. Ron Hubbard, and so I've spent a lot of time studying a lot of his work, and the art book I think is as an artist. And one of the things I love about L. Ron Hubbard is that he has this way of taking life or any part of life and distilling it down to these super basic concepts that you'll see these concepts in in anything that's working. Those basic concepts are the things that work. So as an artist, I found that art book really understanding that art is essentially communication.
Right.
So to me, that was gigantic of a realization. Wow, art is communication. And then I realized, because I come from a jazz background, and jazz guys tend to be a little bit snobby sometimes about other music. I'm not selling out or whatever, kind of thing. But right. I remember realizing art is communication, and I realized, wow, Elvis Presley, who I did not really have a very high regard for, and I realized, wow, he really connected with a lot of people. So as an artist, he really, he was doing something very right as an artist.
No, it's very, very true.
I started to look at it in a different way. And so that was one thing. And I realized super important for me. I mean, just as one thing from the art book, when you're doing art, especially when you're a musician, and you've taken piano lessons or you've had music lessons at all, you always think you're doing something wrong. Because, the teacher's always telling you, nope, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. And you're, doing your recital and you're so afraid you're going to do something wrong. Well, I realized that the goal is not to, the goal isn't perfection. The goal is communication. So when I'm performing, I don't care if I hit some wrong notes. I care whether, can somebody get this idea? Can somebody understand this beautiful thing that this song is trying to say, And so I've got my attention is on that. And it's so much, well, it's really what I want to do. I'm really there to communicate. I'm not there to, show you how perfect my playing is. I'm there to, anyway. So first, that would be the first thing I would say, the art book. The next thing probably maybe sounds funny, but I would recommend this book called Introduction to Scientology Ethics. And you think, well, ethics, and the funny thing about even the definition of ethics is not, it isn't people punishing you. Ethics is actually a point of view of like, what can I do that will be the most beneficial to myself and everyone else and everyone else in all of life, plants and animals, everything in life. So, but one of the things in this book that's the basic concept of ethics is it's something that, that I think we all think along the lines of, what can I do that will be the most valuable thing, the most beneficial to me and everyone else, my wife, my kids, my work, my job, my community, everything. So that's ethics. But in that book, there are these tools that tell you, what to do if things are getting a little bit better. What do you do? How do you handle that? If things crash out, if you're really in a bad situation and you're in a dangerous situation, you don't have your rent money, what do you do in that situation? If you get, if you hit the lottery, how do and it's not telling you like to do like, this is what you do, make a check out to this person or that person, but it's more like, like if you get a lot of money in, first thing you do is you economize. You don't spend all the money. You cut back.
Ethical guidelines.
Yeah.
You can't get into the formulas.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to give it an example so it makes more sense, to somebody who might not be familiar with. But those formulas.
The art book is very pertinent, very significant to what you've been saying for the last half an hour, and I think it's a great recommendation. And I think that those who hear this and in the podcast, I think they're going to find things helpful for them and open their eyes a little bit and get them to see a bigger picture of what music and life are all about. And I want to thank you, Marc, for coming on board with us today.
Thanks for having me, Art. It's been like a pleasure. It's really nice to connect with you and be able to, just chat for a minute. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.